Suzanne Hewitt versus Matthew Christopher Fenton. Assume that you were unable at this point to resolve this matter. All right, then we'll conduct a hearing, but I'm going to limit this hearing only on the Christmas visitation that is being requested. So what are you specifically asking for?
December the 24th, beginning at 8 a.m. to December the 25th at 12 p.m. So mother can have that second half. So
he wants the Christmas Eve and Christmas morning.
Yes, Judge. He didn't have the Thanksgiving because he was not able to do the visitation. So we're hoping we can get the Christmas Eve to Christmas morning.
Prior to this, this child is 2 years old, I think, 3 years old. The child is
3 years old, Judge.
And what has he been having for visitation up to this point?
The order is originally every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, alternating from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. until 90 days was over, which is what it was over by the end of November. And then beginning December, it was supposed to be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. unsupervised, still during the weekends.
All right, then you may put on your proof. Call your first witness.
Judge, I call my client, Mr. Fenton.
Matthew Christopher Fenton.
Okay. If we calculate from August the 31st, when you had your first visitation, all the way to 90 days, actually to today, you would have had 16 days of visitation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And out of those 16 days, how many were you able to actually spend time with your son, Ashton?
She only allowed me 8 visits.
8 visits. During those 8 visits, how was Ashton responding to you whenever you show up at Miss Hewitt's home?
Oh, he's really excited, just jumping up and down every time I get to the door.
Okay.
Trying to put his shoes on so he can go to the park.
Okay. So he's pretty much know you by your face. And what does he call you?
He's not really real verbal, but...
Okay. Are you able to ascertain his needs between you and him interacting?
Yes, ma'am.
Is he able to basically, you just said that he's mostly nonverbal, is that what you said?
Yeah, he says little things like go and yeah, I mean, but he's not really that verbal.
Okay. But in terms of going to the bathroom or if he needs to eat and things like that, are you able to figure out what your son needs?
Yes, ma'am. I've done my parenting class.
All right. And isn't it true that you're able to take him out of Miss Hewitt's home, some of those visits without her being present, but with her consent?
Yes, it started December 1st. I should have received 3 visits. I drive down every weekend and...
Hold on, Mr. Fenton. Oh, you need to...
I might need to get a little closer. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Pull the base of it to you.
Okay.
Let me rephrase my question. During those 8 days that you had visitation, did Miss Hewitt allow you to take Ashton outside of her home without her presence and you were able to visit with him?
Yes, ma'am. Me and her daughter Sophie and Ashton, and then my fiance Asia, we would go to the park, which is just a few hundred feet down the road from her house.
Okay.
And then on one occasion, I had to go get Miss Hewitt some car parts. Her car had messed up, and me, Asia, and Ashton all went together to get those without her.
Okay. And what are your plans for Christmas? Do you have any relatives?
Yeah, my mom, my sister, and my nieces are all planning to come to the house for Christmas.
Okay. And you got gifts prepared for Ashton?
Oh yeah, we got his whole room set up. We had 13 family members come over for Thanksgiving, but I wasn't allowed to get him. She would not even answer the door.
Right. And then my last question to you is just describe to the judge, how many bedrooms do you have in your home?
3.
Okay. And you would have a separate bedroom for Ashton to sleep over if you're allowed to take him there from the 24th to the 25th?
Yes, ma'am. It's all set up. His toddler bed, everything he needs. It's a brand new room. I built the house, and it's never been stayed in.
Okay. In fact, I will show you photos,
I did.
fairly recent.
Yes, ma'am. This was just last weekend
Okay.
on
And-
Sunday.
Okay, and those photos fairly depict the
Have
condition
you
of your
shown Ms.
home.
Hewitt those photos?
Yes, Judge, I gave her a copy, actually. So those photos, if you can peruse through them, it shows your home, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you have a separate bedroom where it's got a mini bed for Ashton, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you feel that your home is safe for him
Most definitely.
and suitable?
Most definitely.
And who lives there?
Me, my fiance, Asia, and my stepdaughter, Elena.
Okay. And how long have you been living with your fiance and Elena?
Just a little bit over 3 years.
Okay. So you've been in.
October was 3 years.
Okay. And Elena was actually on the stand the last time that you were in front of Judge Wolf, is that correct?
That's correct.
And she testified that you had taken care of her all that time, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Judge, I would like to enter that as an exhibit.
All right, mark it as Exhibit 1.
And then I will show you another set of pictures. Pictures, Mr. Fenton.
Asia, my fiance.
Okay, and what do those pictures depict?
Us at the park. I guess on one occasion at the park, we went multiple times. And then this one depicts, he really likes to get in my truck and push the horn and play with all the buttons. And he thinks it's funny because I won't let him push the horn. He tries to get around me to do it. And then. No,
Those
actually,
photos were
It's 2
taken-
times at the park. This
Okay.
is, because the shirt's different there. So it
Okay.
does show 2.
Okay, so those were taken during your visitation after you were in front of Judge Wolf, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
then the very last one, that was from April.
Okay,
Right,
so that one, okay.
I found out on March 25th that he was my biological son, and I was able to go down and have a visit at Ms. Hewitt's home. And actually, that's not at her home. This is when I took him and Sophie to Thunder Alley, the bowling alley, with my
Okay.
mother.
And so Ms. Hewitt allowed you to take Ashton outside of her home?
Yes, ma'am.
Outside of her presence, okay. Would like to enter that as an exhibit. And so you're asking Judge Wolf to grant you December the 24th from 12 p.m., is that right?
Please.
To December 25 at noontime?
That's
So that
correct.
mom can have the second half of Christmas vacation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, Judge, I also have in the motion the supervised visitation, so will that be continued, or am I allowed to go ahead and request for that
Well-
hearing?
Your motion is for, I'm not going to modify the order other than to set some Christmas visitation. The previous order was to be unsupervised beginning November 30th, according to that original order, at least the way it was drawn, correct?
Yes, Judge.
The way the order was drawn states that after 90 days, he shall have unsupervised visitation from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with permission to take the child to locations outside the mother's home during his parenting time. And that was entered in November. So I'm not going to address anything except Christmas visitation at this point, since she has no attorney.
And that's all my questions, Judge.
Ms. Hewitt, you have the right, acting as your own attorney, to ask questions of him regarding his request for Christmas visitation or anything he's testified to. It is not your time to testify. I'm going to give you a chance to testify, but do you have questions you want to ask? If you do, you need to go to the podium. You're not required to ask any questions, but it is your chance to ask them if you have any.
So did you have open CPS investigations in Scottsville regarding molesting your stepdaughter? your
No.
ex-wife? So there's not court documents in Scottsville, Kentucky, where you and Buffy went to court with you molesting their stepdaughter, your stepdaughter?
I never,
You don't remember going to court
I
with your
never-
ex-wife?
no.
So if we pull the files, the court records,
You can pull, there is no, I
Yes.
have zero criminal record whatsoever.
you changed your last name.
I
That's
changed my
why you
last
changed your
name at
last name.
32. I have my,
I'm sorry. You're going to ask in the form of a question. You can ask him whether or not he did or did not change his last name.
Did you change your last name after you and your wife went to court for the molestation of your stepdaughter, buying her a dildo to, I quote, practice for her?
I changed my last name at 32 years old after I went through my first divorce and had my lawyer retained when my grandmother was on her deathbed because she asked me to change my last name because I'd never carried my father's last name. With my DNA records, I changed my last name.
Had nothing to do with trying to evade what had,
No. Amy,
Transpired
it
in
had to
court
do
with your
me
ex-wife
having the
and-
wrong last name.
okay, your whole life.
Men are supposed to carry their father's last name, so you can pass
mean-
it on.
Just kind of weird it happened after.
You can't make a statement.
Sorry.
You need to ask a question.
Okay. I don't feel safe.
Thank you. Just have a seat. Hold on, Mr. Benton, where do you live?
Scottsville, Kentucky, it's east of Bowling Green, about 10 miles across the
So
Tennessee, Kentucky.
how long does it take you to drive between there and where the child is living?
It's 2 hours without traffic, 2.5 with traffic. It varies, I always allow 2.5 hours.
How long did you, how long, I'm sorry. How long have you had this lady in your life?
Over 3 years, 3 years.
And
in
is she
October.
living with you at that address?
Yes,
All right, so that, the pictures that we show is your residence with this lady that your girlfriend or paramour
Fiancé.
or whatever live in together. Okay. Now, and does she have children?
yes, a 16-year-old. She turned 16 December the 9th, Elena, which
Right.
is in the courtroom today.
Allegations get made in divorces sometimes to gain an advantage over a custody situation. And I'm just going to ask you that you're under oath and you understand that lying under oath is aggravated perjury, a felony.
Yes, sir.
So she's asked you a question about this issue about whether or not there was ever an accusation made against you that you had sexually molested a child in a prior situation. Was there such an allegation? Yes or no?
There was a CPS investigation, but it wasn't to do with anything to do with me molesting a child. It had to do with her finding a sex toy that was brand new in the laundry room late at night and carried it to her bedroom across the house, took a picture of it, sent it to her friends by her grandma's.
It was a what now?
It was a sex toy, like a little, but it
A
was
sex toy.
It was brand new, and it was wrapped up in a package in the laundry room, hidden.
And who did this? The child took a picture of it?
She took it from the laundry room while everybody else was in bed, took it to her bedroom, unwrapped it, snapped a picture of it, and sent it to her friend that lived beside her grandma in Westmoreland, Tennessee. Well, the friend shows her mom, mom calls grandma, grandma calls CPS.
All right. So there was an investigation. What was the result of that investigation?
Her brother stayed there and she went and lived with her dad and then ultimately went to live at her grandma's.
All right.
Her brother graduated.
But there was
from
never,
home.
according to you, there was never any investigation of you for you allegedly having committed some act against
No,
this child.
no, and no criminal, anything, I mean, no.
Now, your son, and this is a little boy, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he is 3 years old, and you have had contact with him since you learned, as you said, in March, that he was March of this year, that he was your
2025.
biological child.
March the 25th, yes, sir.
And you understand that's not a very long period of time to have a relationship with a child that's 3 years old. You're just beginning to learn him and him learn you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And we are not going to deal with what's going to happen visitation-wise with, the future, except I'm trying to deal with this Christmas visitation. Who is you're saying is coming to your house for Christmas?
My mother, which is 82 years old, and my sister, Jaren, which Miss Hewitt was best friends with when we were kids. And she is 2 years older than me, so she would be 43. And then I have two nieces that are 12 and 10. And then I have two grown nieces that are 24 and 26 who are registered nurses. And then a nephew, and he's 20, and he's in the medical field as well.
All right. Okay.
Anton, I just want to clarify the change of name, and I'm going to pass some documents to you. Tell me what those documents are.
My original birth certificate from when I was born, and then my original Social Security card with my last name reading Englehart, as well as the birth certificate. When I was born, from 0 to 1, my name was changed 3 times by my mom, or twice, I know. I carried my sister. We have different dads' last name originally, which was Reisinger, and then my mother changed it to Englehart when I was 0 to 1. And when my grandma was on her deathbed, she asked me to change my last name. She said, "You're going to have a son one day, and I want him to have the right last name." She said, "So you have your DNA records. Please go change your last name." I did this at 32 years old, so many, many years ago. It's been 9 years since I did this.
So you didn't change your name to evade some criminal prosecution whatsoever?
No, not at all.
And tell me about the clearances that you have gotten from the government, from NASA and things like that, just very briefly.
I did a project year before last in Mississippi at the NASA facility, which is a government facility. And I mean, you have to do extensive background checks, and I have a U.S. government badge on the table.
Okay, so they had run your criminal background and things like that. Is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. I've worked federal projects, so anytime I work on my airport, like B&A Airport, or any high-profile job, that's part of it, you have
Okay.
to.
And that's an ongoing situation with your current job, is that right?
Yes, for the last 23 years. That's correct.
And the reason why you were not able to visit with your child from the time that he was born was because Ms. Hewitt concealed the real paternity of Ashton to you. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have that in a message where she told me I came in from Virginia when he was expected, and she would not let me come to the hospital, told me it had nothing to do with me, that she had already DNA'd the father, and I just assumed he was already there. And the other father is actually, she goes up, I don't know, she had a DUI, and the bondsman that bonded her out of jail was the other potential father, and he was exonerated, or when Ashton was 1 year old. I received notice from the Tennessee ChildSupport office in February of this year, asking me to do a DNA test.
Okay.
And that was how I found out.
And then from then on, you tried to foster the relationship, is that right?
Yes.
And is that your purpose here, is to continue to have that relationship with your son?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all, Judge. And I'm not entering those documents into the exhibit, so you can take it with you.
Okay.
So you and Miss Hewitt had a relationship at some point. How long was that relationship?
We never had a relationship, and we knew each other from the time we were children, from about 5 to 16. My mom's farm, which she still owns in Rockbridge, Bethpage, Tennessee.
Well, obviously she became pregnant, so you had some sort of a relationship.
Well, I was married for years, and I didn't really see Miss Hewitt until, I guess, it would have been the beginning of 2020, and Facebook. she ended up reaching out to me on Facebook, and I went down, and it was kind of just went down for the weekend and met with Miss Hewitt, and then it wasn't long afterwards she stated that she was pregnant, and I'd went back down, only on a couple weekends, but I knew that the other potential father was, that they were having a relationship as well, based off of their phone conversations, and I worked on the road at the time. I worked on the gas pipeline, so I did a lot of travel. And
Okay, so when did you find out she was pregnant?
probably about a week after or 2 weeks. Well, really, I didn't know for sure until 4.5 months when I took her to the doctor.
All
For
right,
the
and
first
who
time.
did she tell you was the father of this child?
She told me it was the other guy. I'm not sure his name.
So you at no time knew that you were the father until you got this petition from the Department of Child Support Office, rather.
No, I mean, she told me when she first got pregnant that it was mine, but then it changed very quickly that it was the other guy's. And so I didn't really, I'm 40, fixing to be 41, and I've never had a biological child. So I believed her. I really believed that, it was the other man's child, but.
All right. Ms. Hewitt, you have the right, if you have any other questions, I'll allow you to ask those questions. Do you have anything else you want to ask him? All right. Thank you. Step down. All right. Mr. Fenton has rested his proof. So, Ms. Hewitt, if you want to be heard on this issue, I'll be glad to let you testify. But we're also just dealing with his request for Christmas visitation, in which he is requesting Christmas Eve until Christmas Day at noon. So come to the podium. If you're going to testify, are you going to testify? Then come around here and raise your right hand and be placed under oath. All right. Let me correct one thing. I know you referred to this as my child. That my child is nonverbal autistic. Number one, it's not just your child. He is the father of that child, and the legal rights that he has are such that you cannot simply say, this is my child, I'm going to do it my way. So you have to understand that he has a legal right that has to be balanced with your legal right, and first and foremost is the best interest of the child. So why don't you tell me what it is that you object to him having visitation over Christmas?
I don't object to supervised visitation at all, but he doesn't know Ashton well enough or anything about, I've raised a 22-year-old special, autistic, and he's in college now for cybersecurity. He works at Walgreens, licensed pharmacy tech. I've been doing this a long time. I've got a 12-year-old daughter and now Ashton, but he's more special needs than any of them. He's got a rare heart condition also. He gets therapies all through the week. He was previously with TEIS from birth, and then we switched over to the Board of Education, where he gets ABA, OT, PT, speech, and it's just, he doesn't know when he's overstimulated, and even when he's had this visitation, the only thing that he does is pick him up. He doesn't try to talk to him or anything. And he's worried about taking him out to his truck where his girlfriend sits the whole time outside the house in the truck. That's what he goes out there, and he's more worried about her sitting in the truck than my child. And we got in an argument because he was teaching him to go up to the road. And he kept trying to go up there, and he let him lay on the horn, and I have neighbors and things too. But, I don't feel comfortable. And as far as, I can prove from his own messages I've got printed out, he's known since day one this is his child. The only reason any of this started, because I had to work with DHS child support finally, and to be honest, I wish I just never did. I wouldn't have to deal with this because he's dangerous, he's erratic, and as far as his sister, I've got messages from his sister too. His sister and his nieces and nephews, they don't want anything to do with him. His mom's even scared of him and doesn't like to deal with him. Yes, she's rode down there to see Ashton, but at the same time, she knows and how he is. He's just erratic. You never know what it's going to be. And he always takes it out on women and children.
All right. So when you say you would be in favor of supervised visitation, what exactly are you proposing?
Continue like at my house supervised, where I can see.
Has he been allowed to take the child away from your house?
Like to the playground.
So he's been away from you while he's had this child?
I mean, I drove down there, and then the other time the neighbor that I'm friends with watched.
All right.
But it's right next to my house.
Ms. Hendrickson, do you have any questions?
Who is your son's pediatrician?
What does that have to do with anything?
What was your question?
Who is the child's pediatrician? She's saying that the child is going through therapy and things, which we don't think it's correct.
Number one, you don't get to, you can object to a question, but that here, you need to understand one thing. And this is, you've referred to the child as my child more than once. And I thought maybe I'd emphasize it enough, but I want to make sure you understand. This is the father of this child. You and he had a sexual relationship, and he is the biological father of this child. Therefore, he is vested with certain rights that the law in the state of Tennessee give him. Those rights include, as a non-custodial parent, the right to know who the child's doctors are, the right to be advised of certain things about this child. And when this is all said and done, there's going to be a parenting plan that's going to be entered that's going to set forth all of that information. But you cannot simply say that you're not going to let him know who the pediatrician is.
I mean,
So you're going to have to answer that question for Ms. Hendrickson. Answer the question.
Dr. Carol Moore.
What's the first name?
Carol.
Carol, C-A-R-O-L.
Mm-hmm.
And where is the office at?
Dixon on Mathis Drive.
On where?
Mathis Drive.
Okay, so if I check the records, they will have Ashton's file there, medical records there?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the cardiologist?
Dr. Bruns.
Can you say that again?
Dr. Bruns.
Can you spell that?
B-R-U-N-S.
What's the first name?
I don't know.
Okay. And where is his office at?
He comes up here certain days, but his main office is at Centennial.
Centennial in Nashville?
Yes,
Centennial Boulevard?
Centennial, like the hospital Centennial.
Oh, Centennial Hospital. I see what you're saying. Okay. And you said your son has a rare heart condition. What is that rare heart condition?
It's Epstein's anomaly, pulmonary hypertension. One of the valves isn't fully formed, so it gushes. He's been getting EKG since he was born, and he didn't have to luckily be on medication, but we had to wean him off oxygen.
So, but he's able to play like a regular child and things like that. Is that right?
I mean, he plays.
Yeah. Okay. So, the judge asked you. You've allowed Mr. Fenton to go to the park with Ashton. That was asked. Tell me about the therapy. So you said there's an occupational therapy, a physical therapy, and a speech therapy. Just
ABA.
briefly, what is the schedule during the week on that?
He goes to school during the week, and from 7:30 to 10:30, and we just redid his IEP where they wanted to increase 30 minutes of physical therapy because of the lack of muscle tone in his feet being hypermobile.
What exact school are you talking about? Where are you taking him?
Oakmont Elementary, special services.
Okay, so he's enrolled there right now?
Yes,
Okay.
and previously TEIS since birth.
Okay. Mr. Fenton has brought his mother with him on some occasions. You remember that?
Yeah, I love his mom. I
Right,
mean, I
so-
love her.
So it's not true that he does not have a good relationship with his mother,
No, he
because in
does-
fact, he has taken him to your house so that he can see his grandson. Is that right?
That doesn't mean he has a good relationship with his mom.
But he has taken the grandma with him
Yeah.
on
and
some
then
of the
she comes
visitation. Okay.
And, yeah,
So Ashton has met his grandma, correct?
yes.
Okay. And then, and you're saying that Mr. Fenton knew about the paternity, but in fact, you texted him confirming that you told him he was not the father. Do you remember that text message?
Oh, yes, I've got text messages too, but after many drunk, late night, crazy messages, and I mean, him calling me a drunk gutter slut and all this stuff, so, you know, and I've got the message from his sister too, telling me just say it's not his.
Okay, so but you never corrected it. Let's say you were drunk when
But
you
he
told
knew.
him you're not the.
I don't
Let
drink.
me finish the question, ma'am.
I don't drink.
Well, you just said you were drunk.
I said he was drunk.
Oh, he was drunk. Okay, so but you are confirming that you told him he was not the father. Is that correct?
Yes, but he knew.
Okay.
He had a
So
period
it was
tracker
a
on his phone.
misstatement, ma'am.
One of you
I'm
talk
sorry.
at a time, please.
So it was a misstatement when you claimed there on that stand that he knew all along, because you told him he was not the father.
He knew all along. He had a period tracker on my phone. We were never apart in the beginning when we were together. He purposely got me pregnant. And then when I wouldn't move out and live in a travel trailer, like when I worked out of town and lose my housing and all that crap, he got mad and but I would still get this crazy erratic messages, or he'd show up out of the blue.
But why did you tell him that the DNA test was not
He had a
him?
DNA test in his truck when he came down after Ashton was first born. Walked in the house, said he had a DNA test in the truck, but he knew he didn't need it because it was his kid. And before this was even set up to let him see him, I let his mom and him come see Ashton at my house without any orders. And I said that they could come see him.
Okay, but since then, you were not following the judge's order.
Well-
You have not been allowing Mr. Fenton to see his son whenever it's possible. I understand when the child is sick, but when he's not sick, he shows up after 2.5 hours
You're
of
not
driving.
Ms. Hendrickson, I've told you, we're not dealing with the contempt issue, and I don't think it's
Understand,
appropriate to
Judge.
go into those issues.
That solved my
This is
question.
only about the.
And I only know of the supervised Saturdays. And it says that in the YouTube video, we were supposed to come to court back to here after 90 days. Now, what you
I
ever
just
drew
ruled
up,
that we're not going into that, so you
Sorry.
don't have to say anything else about that. So,
That's all my questions, Judge.
anything else you want to say?
me,
All right, thank you. Step down. All I can say is that, number one, the court's main emphasis in all of these cases is the best interest of the minor child. Mr. Fenton says he was not aware that he was the father. In fact, he was denied that he was the father, and therefore he didn't take any steps over the last 3 years until he got notified that he was going to be the father, or that he was potentially the father, and then the testing proved that he was. She says, of course, Ms. Hewitt says that he knew all along he was the father. I'm not sure exactly how she said he intended to get her pregnant and so forth, but they had a voluntary sexual relationship that resulted in a child. That is the immutable fact. And as a result of that, we've got a child who's in the middle of this scenario. Ms. Hewitt obviously has nothing good to say about the man she had sex with and had a child with, but she essentially doesn't want him to have unsupervised visitation. I don't have any proof before me that he poses a threat to this child, but by the same token, the proof before me is that he has a number of health issues, including being nonverbal autistic. Even Mr. Fenton testified the young man is very limited in what he has to say. It's a giant leap from going from supervised visitation of a child that you first get acquainted with at 2.5 or 3 years old, to having the child spend the night with you on Christmas Eve and until Christmas Day at noon. That's a world away from what I think this child would be used to. But by the same token, he needs to have visitation with a child that his family can be a participant in, because this extended family is this child's family. So the balancing of those is the difficult part of this. I think that under these circumstances, I'm not going to grant him the visitation from Christmas Eve overnight to Christmas Day, but I will grant him visitation from 8 o'clock Christmas morning until 6 o'clock p.m. Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve morning at 8 a.m. to Christmas Eve at 6 p.m. He'll have the right to take the child to Kentucky if that's what he wishes to do, to visit with his family. He will give her a telephone number where she can talk to the child while he's there and make sure that she's reassured that there's not any problems. The only reason I'm not granting the overnight visitation is my concern about these health issues, a congenital heart defect, other issues that Ms. Hewitt says under oath this child has. You're going to have a right to look at those medical records and determine whether or not she's being truthful with the court. Same thing, you be quiet when I'm talking. Same thing goes for your testimony about what you say this past event has. She has a right to bring in evidence regarding that, and I'll determine at a later time, or one of the other judges would, whether or not you've been truthful in the history that you've given me. This child deserves to have both parents, but I'm of the opinion that right now you need to take small steps to get to that point. So I'm giving you unsupervised visitation on Christmas Eve of this year to allow you to try to have that time with your family in that, and we'll see how that goes. But I am of the opinion that is the best scenario I can create for the child to have that contact. And that will be the order of the court. So Ms. Hendrickson will draw this order, and the visitation will begin 8 a.m. Christmas Eve morning.
Judge, if I may, maybe request that mother just, the exchange should happen at the Dixon Police Department instead of the father going to the house, because in the past, the mother would just simply lock the doors.
That
And
happens,
so-
she's going to go to jail. So, he may miss his Christmas visitation. He may end up with custody of the child because she's going to if she denies this court order, she is looking at 10 days in jail minimum, because that's what's going to happen, Ms. Hewitt. I'm ordering this. You have to comply. You don't have a choice. And as a result, it's 8 a.m. Christmas Eve morning until 6 p.m. Christmas Eve night. He will pick the child up at her house. I'm not going to traumatize this child further by having the child have to go to the police station and be exchanged with his parent. All that's going to do is convey to the child that there's something dangerous going on here, or else there wouldn't have to be exchanged at the police department. You'll pick the child up. You'll have the child ready to go with whatever needs to go with him to be able to spend the day. The child goes to daycare, so he's away from you for times. This is nothing different than that, except it'll be in his home. You don't bring it back. You violate this court order by some fashion, then you're going to go to jail. I don't want to put either one of you in jail. I want you to behave and do what you're supposed to. It's Christmas, for goodness sakes. You're supposed to have a contact with your family. This child, I'm doing this for the child's benefit, not for Mr. Fenton's benefit. I'm doing it so this child can have time with his extended family and begin to learn that these are his family, these people are his family, and that he has these other relationships. He has medical issues. We'll have to deal with those things down the road. But this is my order for today.
Judge, and one more thing, Ms. Hewitt did start saying that she brought some documents. I did have a subpoena ducis tecum issued
I'm not
for
dealing with
her.
that, Ms. Hendrickson. I said all along that this is only about the Christmas
For the Christmas
visitation.
visitation.
You have other motions, you have other court dates, you can reset your motion. In January, we have a number of different chancery days. You can get with the clerk, you can reset your motions for a day in January, and we'll deal from there. So But I'm telling you both right now, you better start thinking about the best interest of this child and not the possessory interest. I'm very concerned, Ms. Hewitt, about you referring to my child, my child, my child. It is your child. It is his child. So you need to start phrasing it differently, because all that means to someone like me or to Mr. Fenton is that you think he belongs to you and he has no right. And I'm telling you, he has rights that are given to him under the law of the state of Tennessee, and I'm going to enforce those rights, but I'm also going to do it in a way that this child will benefit the most that I can create. All right, Ms. Hendrickson will draw the order. We have 15 minutes before we have to break for lunch.
Thank you, Judge.
Anybody have anything that they want to take up in the next 15 minutes?